In a statement that surprised many, the US Embassy in India issued a clear warning on what they called birth tourism. Sharing a post on X, US Embassy in India said that their consular officers will now deny tourist visas if they believe the main purpose of travel is to give birth in the United States so that the child can automatically obtain US citizenship. Officials stress that this practice is not permitted. The policy makes it clear that visa applications will be carefully reviewed to ensure travel is for genuine tourism or family visits, not primarily to secure citizenship. Experts say this move is aimed at preventing misuse of the US visa system, and travelers are being urged to be transparent about the purpose of their trip to avoid having their applications rejected. The crackdown on the birth tourism comes as Donald Trump administration has intensified efforts to curb immigration, both legal and illegal. As the US tightens its travel policy for foreigners, married or pregnant women are applying for visas and are likely to face increasing scrutiny. Earlier this year, US President signed an order to end birthright citizenship, which grants citizenship to those born on American soil. Under the 14th Amendment, nearly all children born in the US get automatic citizenship. Birth tourism refers to the practice of foreigners traveling to the United States specifically to give birth, often referred to as anchor babies in a very derogatory manner, meaning their immigrant parents used them to get a foothold in the United States and eventually become citizens themselves. US President Donald Trump has criticized birthright citizenship since his first term. In 2020, during Trump's first tenure, the US Department of State unveiled a new rule that said pregnant women applying for visitor visas may have to prove a specific reason for travel other than giving birth on American soil. Now, the Trump administration is again cracking down on birth tourism. The US government has banned issuing B1, B2 tourist visas to applicants suspected of traveling primarily to give birth. This comes even as the US State Department's new social media vetting policy has triggered widespread disruption for H-1B visa applicants in India, with many reporting the cancellations of previously scheduled visa appointments. According to multiple reports, the cancellations are linked to the rollout of the new policy, which requires consular officers to review applicants' online presence, including their social media activity. I'm being joined by Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, former Indian diplomat. Thank you very much, sir. Good evening. First question, sir. It's interesting what they have said. And they have said if your primary intent is to give birth, your visa request is going to be rejected. Now, how do you define primary intent?
Well, I have also seen this social media post from the US Embassy in New Delhi, in which it has said that it will not process a visa application if there is any indication that the tourist intends to give birth on American soil as a shortcut to obtaining citizenship. Now, since January 2020, for more than almost 6 years, more than 5 years plus 10, 11 months, there has been this rule that the US government will not issue B1 or B2 visitor visas to applicants who immigration officials determine are seeking to enter the US primarily for the birth of tourism. In other words, it's called birth tourism, that is giving birth in the US to obtain US citizenship for their child. Now, there are reasons why the US immigration authorities have been suspicious. But despite this rule of January 2020, the embassy here has not been so strict as it now seems to be becoming. Because by putting out this social media post, there is a clear indication that there is going to be a lot of toughness. As it is, the Trump administration is making visas more difficult to obtain as you pointed out, through increased scrutiny. And there are also higher costs and fees, new restrictions on specific categories such as H-1B and student visas. And there are also more strict health and financial requirements. So the Trump administration has implemented extreme vetting policy, which include in particular extensive social media checks. And naturally, this brings about an automatic delay in the entire process of issuing visas because the social vetting is naturally going to take time. And this has led to higher denial rates and increased requests for evidence for visa applications. The visa processing officer or the consular officer can ask the applicant to produce evidence, and
Fair enough.
he may ask for more evidence. So this whole process is intended to, deter visas and sort of applicants, and it's not something that promotes easier travel as was before. It makes very complicated life for
Right.
applicants, particularly for H-1B visas.
Right. Ambassador Prabhu Dayal, there are two aspects that you have touched upon, and both of them I think are very important to discuss, particularly for our viewers who may be interested in this. But let's just stick to one more question I want to talk about birth tourism, and that is, what about baby mooning? You know what I mean to say? A lot of people, before they get into formally into the parenthood process, would just want to take off by themselves, enjoy a little holiday. And many times it could also be the United States or other European countries. Now, if you're planning US, does this mean it's out of bounds now?
Well, by all accounts, the U.S. Visa issuing authorities are going to be very tough. You know, they will make sure that if there are women who are in that age group when they can give birth, then they will probably be required to have some medical tests done or make it difficult for them to get visas easily. So this is just another step which has been taken under the Trump administration
Right.
to tighten visa controls. You know, Donald Trump has been making a lot of statements
Right.
which indicate that his policy is to be tough
Right.
and that he will just be following the idea of America first.
Right.
There is a feeling amongst his supporters that foreigners come on these visas and they're taking away their jobs and that somehow they are contributing
Right.
to the sort of difficulties which Americans have. Although this is not true because companies welcome H-1B visa holders when they find that they contribute meaningfully to their performance. But nonetheless, the Trump administration has taken very tough policies, and this attempt to cut down on what they are calling birth tourism is another example of the sort of measures that the new administration is taking.
Right. Ambassador, you know, this is also spilling on, as you mentioned, to another issue, and that's like the very tight scrutiny that has begun, particularly since the Trump administration 2.0. But what does this really mean for an Indian who's looking for that appointment? Now, there are already reports that a lot of these appointments that were scheduled for December or say January have now been pushed into March, April, which essentially means that the wait time increases, and then with that several other complexities also increase. There are also concerns about how there seems to be, a lot of concerns about how families still remain parted from each other. Many of them would have visited here for certain other reasons and they are set to go back, and a lot of complications. How should Indians really be looking at this particular period, especially if they are among those who are looking to move to US?
You know, Indians are going to be among the worst affected on account of these measures because Indians constitute the largest number of H-1B visa applicants. And if there are delays, then they will impact Indian visa applicants very severely. As it is, there are delays which are being reported because the interview slots have been pushed back because the consular officers say that they need to do that social media vetting. And there are other checks and controls. So let me make it very clear. The US authorities are doing everything possible to discourage H-1B visa applicants because of the sort of pressure which the Trump administration is exerting on them, because the entire system which is now evolving is to discourage foreigners and to discourage visa applicants and make it very difficult for them in every manner possible.
Right. You know, a lot is spoken about free speech. And when US says that there'll be social media scrutiny because they don't want anti-US voices to be getting shield and a foothold in the United States, what does that really mean? Because if it is really free speech, if it is about free speech, then you could have all kinds of opinions on social media. Now we are being also told that even LinkedIn profiles are being thoroughly searched. It's not just what you're putting out on, say, Post X or on Insta. It's also your LinkedIn profiles or whatsoever profiles you have. They are being thoroughly searched, even if you put them up in your formal application or not. What does this really mean? What are they vetting for?
This means that the visa officer of a particular embassy or consulate will have discretion to decide whether a particular media post or a social media post is harmful to American interests. The judgment will be exercised by the particular officer who looks at the visa application. So, in other words, even the slightest provocation can lead to visa rejection. And I think this entire policy is being based on the narrative that a lot of people have managed to come into the US who are harming US interests and who are promoting anti-US activities. So this policy takes advantage of that whole narrative. It's based on that narrative. And the purpose is to discourage foreigners to the extent possible. In other words, the message going out is foreigners are not welcome. Of course, the Trump administration has brought in the gold visa, for instance.
True.
Now, the gold visa requires a down payment of $1 million. And if companies want to sponsor candidates for positions, they have to put in $2 million. So that's a lot of money going into the treasury. Not everybody can afford it. So the whole process discourages the more sort of capable people who would have gone on the basis of merit, and it favors the wealthy. So there is a lot of criticism which is being directed at the gold visa because it favors the wealthy.
Right.
And those wealthy people may not contribute anything to the American system, but they are putting in $1 million, and that's what Mr. Trump wants. So let me put it very bluntly. The new policies are not going to be very friendly to Indian visa applicants, particularly those who look forward to going to the US to work on H-1B visas.
You know, last question, Ambassador Prabhudayal, and that is, US may say so on and so forth, and they may put out rules and they may put out their posts, warn people about birth tourism. But I mean, look at the ratio of what, say, some Indians may go and, engage in birth tourism in comparison to a lot of Indians who actually drive the US economy. In terms of education, in terms of tech, in terms of sheer work, literally the Indians who are going, settling there, running the US economy, that's a huge messaging from India. Should they be worried?
Yes, they have to be worried because now the new policies discourage them from coming to the US. There is a great deal of realization that Indians have contributed in a very big way to the functioning and the growth of US companies. In fact, many tech giants have spoken out in favor of the contribution of Indians towards their functioning. However, the Trump support base argues that foreigners take away our jobs, that foreigners should not be welcome to the United States. And Trump is bowing to the feelings of this sort of an extreme right support base that he has and carving out policies which keep foreigners out, even if it harms the US industries, particularly the tech industries,
right,
to whom H-1B visa holders or people who come and get green card make significant contributions. So there will be a cost to pay, but nonetheless, the direction of the US immigration policy seems to be clearly unfriendly, and Indians are going to be adversely impacted.